Welcome back to Around the Cinema. We'd like to remind you this week that Francis Ford Coppola did Jack, yes, the movie with Robin Williams. I'm joined here by my friends who know the most about Wes Craven's filmography, something that I'm not as well versed in. So, I'd like to dedicate this episode to the recently deceased great director Wes Craven. I'd like to discuss this week what relevance he has in the horror au revoir, what he brought to the table, what he innovated, and also what is your favorite Wes Craven movie.
You know, growing up in the 90s, the big one was Scream, obviously, which became kind of it reinvented or maybe even reinvigorated the slasher genre, which was a big thing in the 80s. You know, you had stuff like Halloween, you had Friday the 13th, and then, you know, those kind of fell by the wayside in the early 90s, and then you had Scream, which was like a meta-take on the slasher film. It was very self-aware of what it was, and then, bam, then we got slasher films again. And now we have torture porn, which isn't so great. But
Wes Craven started that too.
He did start that, but yeah. Fair enough. Yes, he did.
Yes, Last House on the Left.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, actually, I think the first film he did that was meta was actually New Nightmare, which is actually my favorite Wes Craven movie. And then a movie about horror movies. And I think that kind of started something that we actually, as a millennial generation, we do a lot. Like, we do a lot of self-referential stuff and humor within humor and stuff like that. So.
Well, I think that a lot of his work has a little bit of a wink to the audience, something a little bit more like, even beginning before New Nightmare, there was the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and Freddy Krueger, he was different than Michael Myers, than Jason. They were sort of the silent, stalker, killer. They didn't have a personality. Yeah. Freddy Krueger had a personality. It was something where he could be larger than life. And so going to New Nightmare, it was more of how to take that personality and make it even bigger and something different. And referencing that and telling the audience it is a movie, but it's something more than just a movie.
Yeah.
And the same thing in Scream.
That's very true.
I think that's where we get into the idea of relevancy and franchisability. He franchised characters that normally probably would have never have had a shot if it was done by anybody else. He had iconic ways of making the movies. Okay, for example, we talked about Scream. Scream is a slasher flick. It brought it back. Why did it bring it back? Well, in the 90s, more people were... Okay, as time goes on, you get less and less afraid of the things that used to scare you. So how do you bring a slasher film back? He held out really long shots. The sounds that he was creating, the actors that he was bringing to the table, you could... The part where he stabs Drew Barrymore, spoiler alert,
it
went
the
on.
First 10 minutes.
It is the first 10 minutes, but the thing is, that's what makes it creepy, because at first you're like, oh man, he finally got her. And you're like, okay, this is getting a little ridiculous. And you're like, that's really uncomfortable. Yeah. But he's been doing that the entire time. Even though every one of his movies is totally different style, they have a few common elements that he brings. That element of really long takes and really uncomfortable visual art, really uncomfortable sounds. Sounds is what gets me. I'm a very sound person. And it comes to, he takes these long takes and he keeps on stabbing, but it's not slash, 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 eek, eek, eek. It's not over in 5 seconds. It's slow and methodical. You really feel that you are being punctured with the glove blade, Yeah. And or in the Hills Have Eyes, that scene where he attacked the grandmother, he brutally attacked that grandmother while he was killing the girl on the floor and made her watch, and it went on forever. It happened again in Scream. It happened again, and even Red Eye is very minimalist for his style. It's the same thing. There's no reason why jabbing somebody with a pen should take 10 minutes, but it did. He franchised certain people. The reason is they have personalities. Freddy Krueger was perfectly cast with Robert Englund, and it's almost like he's psychotic and knows that he's already dead, but you have to keep on finding a way to kill him. And he's just like, no, it's not like I'm invincible and you have to defeat me. It's like, I already know this is how this is going to end. I'm going to die, but that's okay. I'm going to take you down with me. And he's a total nutcase. And in Scream, that dude never talked. It was just a mask. But he still had a personality. The way he carried himself, the way he had a stance, who he targeted. You can go to somebody in every generation and they'll say, I was legitimately scared by this Wes Craven person. I was legitimately scared by Freddy Krueger. I was legitimately scared by Scream. My favorite film from his is one that legitimately scared me, was Pulse. It was very underground. It was very gritty. It was not his normal style. There's still not a whole lot of CGI. Very practical effects, but when you're talking about white noise manifesting itself in some sort of entity that causes mass suicide, that's obviously going to be CGI. But it wasn't, he still didn't rely on jump scares, which is what modern horror movies, torture porn, anything that's, you ask anybody, oh, it's scary because I jumped out of my seat. That's what people rely on nowadays. He was able to make you see images that you will never forget. We always remember the very first time Freddy killed. He dragged somebody by their entrails across a rooftop and into the bed. And then, wait, Johnny Depp, spoiler, Johnny Depp dies because his entire bed just gets self-imploded and then blood goes everywhere.
Environments.
And the environments and the franchising the villain instead of franchising the good person. I don't remember all the good people in the movies, but I remember Freddy.
You remember Nancy, though.
I remember Nancy.
Yeah, I remember Nancy.
Yeah. But equally, he's making this mythology out of his characters, is that it's something more than just, not to talk down on Halloween, but I mean, Michael Myers, like, he's attacking his sister. It's a very, you're not in trouble for being attacked by Michael Myers unless you're related to him and have that connection, whereas for Nightmare on Elm Street, it's not even your fault, it's the parents. And it has the creepy children's rhyme, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And it has this thing that it's a whole urban legend, so obviously Scream was an extension of that. And then, in my opinion, his best work was The People Under the Stairs, where he makes this modern fairy tale. It's about a kid who has to go into this, essentially, the witch's house from a fairy tale, save the girl, get out alive, save all the people. It's really interesting how he makes it more than just the story. It's a fairy tale.
It's not gimmicky because it has a story. It's got heart, and that's why I end up liking almost every film I've watched. And even the ones that I haven't seen, I guarantee you they've got all those elements just because he kept on doing. He never changed what he was doing. He changed elements. He didn't change the core reason of why he was doing the horror franchise. And I don't think anything today is going to compare until somebody goes back to do that in a practical way. Because jump scares is just, it's in the moment. It scares you for 5 seconds. You walk out of the theater, you don't remember. But you have a household name with his people. Freddy Krueger can be thrown in the same sentence as Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and Luke Skywalker. And you go to somebody down the street and you ask them that, and they're going to say, oh, I know exactly who Freddy Krueger is, because he created mythology. He created a nursery rhyme that, to be honest, I remember in middle school, no one remembered 1, 2, buckle my shoe. They remember Freddy more than that because some crazy parent let their kid watch that before it was time to do that.
That was
Mom.
probably my
You that person?
Oh yeah. No, when I was like 6 years old, for some reason, I was not necessarily allowed to watch rated R movies, but I was. I was watching. It was like a Nightmare on Elm Street, Alien, and The Terminator were like my big go-tos. But back obviously to Wes Craven, I think that the big thing that we're all kind of like touching on is he was a master at creating mood. The way that Hitchcock creates tension, I would say that Wes Craven creates a tone and a mood. Like every single film has this tonality to it that he never duplicates in any other movie, but he twists and turns and makes it into something a little bit more unique and different. Like New Nightmare is a completely different tone than A Nightmare on Elm Street. And the same way that like Red Eye is a different tone than something like Scream. I mean, those aren't even remotely the same movies, but
and let's talk music from the heart.
Let's
just put that in there too. He was, he did things outside of horror, and he was amazing at those things too, which I find really interesting. And I think that focusing on the mood, the characters, that's what allows him to jump out of just being a genre director.
Freddy was probably the person who had the most performance on the screen time, and I don't know if we would consider even Johnny Depp's premiere performance to be his best performance in his career. But the performances didn't matter in that one because it was about the way that Freddy took you out. But then creating the tone and mood that Wes Craven did, you can take it seriously, even though it's different the age group I think you're in. You're a kid like Matt. You're watching that movie at 10 years old, okay? You probably crapped your pants and regret it later because it's creepy. If I ever saw something like that, I will never unsee those things in my life. Then you come around and you're like, middle school, and you're like, I'm going to show this to my girlfriend. I can get come cuddle time because she's going to be scared. And then you get to college and you're just like, that is the cheesiest thing. And let's be honest. You look at some of it and you're like, that is kind of cheesy. You guys got glove blades? Really? And he attacks you in your dream, and if you die in your dream, you're dead in real life? You're really dead? And then you get to be an old person, you're like, I can't show this to my kids. Oh my god! And then the cycle just recirculates. You know. But tone and mood, I think, is the best way to describe that. And Serpent and the Rainbow was the most iconic moment, I think, from my opinion, that I've seen in the film, even though Pulse is my favorite all-around movie. And I think it's because of the tone and the mood. It really does. It's scary.
I think my favorite is still People Under the Stairs, because the different things in that where they're torturing kids, essentially. And it gets away with stuff that you otherwise... Nowadays, the kids are sacred. Mm-hmm. You know, and Wes Craven's films, the kids were never sacred.
No.
Yeah. They were always, you know, able to have their tongues cut off or die by being dragged across the ceiling. There was never this cult of, oh, the kids are always going to be okay. And I think that in filmmaking now, we've regressed and gone back to where the kids are always okay.
Or they're the demon themselves.
Oh,
Too many horror movies.
That's probably more.
But they're not killed.
Likely.
Look at the Omen and things like that.
Yeah,
they're not killed, except for the movie Who Can Kill a Child, which is amazing.
Amazing.
I think Wes Craven would have approved.
But see, even in the original Omen, they didn't kill Damien.
Yeah, I know. And
So.
well, yeah, but I think that Wes Craven was ahead of his time with that theme
Sure.
of the kids aren't sacred. They're gonna die.
We see that in a lot of movies nowadays where you already know, okay, we see this in Dungeons and Dragons, it's meta thinking. You cannot tell the dungeon master, oh, he's not going to do this, so we're allowed to go do this. Wes Craven broke rules.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, something we can
He
all-
broke so many rules.
Which is usually the sign of an innovative director like he was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for joining us here at Around the Cinema. Join us on Friday, which we will be talking about James Bond.